You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Picard called Imposters. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Well, that's what I want you to believe.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
Are you really sure we're who we say we are?
I was going to make the same joke. And, folks, be sure to stick around to the end of the episode. We have a lot of great feedback from you, our listeners, and some really good stuff. And remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page, where we're at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. We're also on Twitter at SQPN, and you can leave us comments wherever you find us. We'd love to hear from you. And another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy is The Secrets of Star Wars, which is also have some new series that are out right now that's being discussed. And you can listen to that at sqpn.com/Star Wars or wherever fine podcasts are found. So to get started, Jimmy, do you want to give us a recap?
This week, the Raffi Musiker show comes back from its mid-season hiatus, and Raffi and Worf track down a Vulcan gangster who was involved in the raid on Daystrom Station. He makes them fight to the death, but they get the upper hand and force him to give them a device that he used to hack the Daystrom Station's AI security system to get into it. Meanwhile, on the Captain Picard show, Jack Crusher is having dreams or visions in which he coldly kills people. Beverly dissects the changeling that Seven killed last episode, and she discovers that changelings have evolved so that they stay solid even in death, they have internal organs, and they can even pass standard blood tests now. The starship Intrepid shows up to interrogate Picard and Riker about their recent actions, and Commander Ro Laren will be their interrogator. There are heavy reasons to suspect Ro of being a changeling, but it turns out that she's not. She's actually been running an investigation, and she's convinced that Starfleet has been infiltrated by changelings at all levels. She's also Worf's handler from Starfleet Intelligence, so we're gearing up for a crossover episode between the Raffi Musiker show and the Captain Picard show. Although Ro has been ordered to bring back Jack Crusher, she gives her underling, she's got two guards with her, orders that they are to leave and go back to the Intrepid. And before she leaves, Ro gives Captain Picard her Bajoran earring. On the shuttle back to the Intrepid, her security officers are revealed to be changelings. They plant a bomb and beam out. Unable to beam out or disarm the bomb, Ro calls Picard and tells him what's happening. She then pilots the shuttle towards one of the Intrepid's engines and severely damages it when the bomb explodes. After which, the Titan, back under command of Captain Shaw, warps out and runs. Meanwhile, Ro's guards have beamed onto the Titan and taken new identities. They, plus two more changelings, try to take Jack into custody, but he opens the red door in his vision, becomes a ruthless killing machine, and slays all four changelings. Afterwards, he tells Beverly he thinks something is seriously wrong with him. Riker and Picard discover that Ro's earring contains data files from her investigation, and they make contact with Worf. The end.
So, overall first impressions. Father Cory, you gotta...
I enjoyed this one. It was a little more plot development. It wasn't quite as much action, but it was very well done. It was great to see Ro and to see her character rehabilitated. You know, I think that's one of the biggest things this episode does, other than, again, advance the plot, is to bring her character back and to say what happened to her after the Maquis fell and everything. So I enjoyed that interaction between her and especially Picard, that connection that they've had going all the way back to TNG. So I kind of enjoyed it.
How about you, Jimmy? Your overall impression?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I've heard some people, like Dave Cullen, say this is their favorite episode of the series, that it's still good after this, but they really, really liked this one. And I liked it too. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I was happy and surprised to see Ro. I exclaimed, "That's Ro!" There's the thing when she appeared.
It's Admiral Kane.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a lot of fun to see her there and to see that interaction. To kind of, it feels like the showrunners are kind of tying up loose ends as Picard comes to an end, which is interesting. And I feel like we're really starting to dig into the mystery of Jack Crusher and what's going on with him. So I'm kind of curious to see where that goes. So overall, enough action for me, enough plot development, enough character development. I really enjoyed this one. So let's talk about Jack Crusher and the weirdness going on around him. We have this vision of him as this killing machine in a Starfleet uniform coming onto the bridge and executing the crew, and then the red branching all over the place. And it feels like I saw someone speculate, and I'm sure this is just speculation. It looks a lot like a Pa Wraith taking control, which would be an interesting, yet another thing pulling in from DS9 along with the Changelings.
I would be skeptical of that, and I don't remember Pa Wraiths taking control with branches like this. I would be skeptical of that. The big bads for this are the Changelings, or at least so far are the Changelings, not the Pa Wraiths. So Jack, in this episode, we start, instead of a flashback, for once we start with something else, which is a vision that Jack is having, or a dream that he's having. It's ambiguous what they are. I mean, they're not exactly communicative visions, but they're like dreams, except when he comes out of them, he's standing there, not in bed. But he has this vision where he kills the bridge crew, and then he hears the voice that he's been hearing say, "Come home." And later, it says, and when the voice speaks again, it's Beverly's voice.
Yes.
And it even says Beverly in the closed captioning. And she says, "Find me, hear me, connect us." And there's, at the very end, when he's talking to Beverly in sickbay, and she's just revealed the truth about the Changelings to him, and she's very concerned about how extraordinary he is. He's able to kill 4. There's a moment where it feels like they're implying she's a Changeling.
Yes.
And so I suspect that whatever's going on, this isn't the real Beverly, and it may not even be the real Jack. I think there is a Jack, but I think whatever happened is with him in his past is more complex, and he doesn't realize he's traveling with this woman. If it turns out that this Jack is a Changeling, that would certainly explain the Changeling's interest in him.
Right.
The downside from a writing perspective is, depending on how you handle it, is it would also tend to undo the father-son relationship that he's been building with Picard. So I don't know that they're going to go that way.
A possibility is, and I've seen this in something else, and I don't remember what it is, where the real Jack, the real Beverly may be mentally connected to the Changelings, and that's how they have all the knowledge that they would need to pass as them. Again, another evolution of the Changelings. Yeah,
that's essentially the same as the not the Crotons, the Doctor Who villains with all the suckers on them.
Yeah.
The Zygons. Yes.
It occurred to me that if they explain this in Zygon terms, to where he's like a body double that's telepathically linked to the original, that would make a lot of sense. I don't know that they'll do that, but that occurred to me as one way of trying to save the father-son relationship from being too severely undermined by the revelation this isn't the real Jack.
And it would explain why, Beverly, he hears Beverly's voice, "Come find me," and all of those aspects of it. Yeah. That would...
It also would be reminiscent of the flesh version of Amy from the season where she was pregnant.
Right.
From Doctor Who.
Yes, that's another one. Yeah, that's right. So, and again, it would be more Changeling evolution, which would be interesting.
Well, and one thing someone thought too is, what if he's more like a hybrid, where he's like a human Changeling hybrid? And the only reason why I would give that any credence at all is, I've commented about the closing credits, where there are little Easter eggs where some of them they've paid off already. And a big part of the closing credits is showing DNA strands, DNA coding and things like that, which, that could hint that there was some DNA manipulation that was going on. Where he's actually, like I said, a hybrid between human DNA and changeling DNA. And that would allow for the fact, like when he went into his killing spree, his eyes changed.
Right.
His eyes changed red, and then he started shooting.
Right. And I think that was one of the things I think why someone thought it was Power Wraith, because there was like that the eye change. So yeah, it would be interesting. Yeah. It could be the changeling coming through too, but yeah.
The paw race, I just always marvel at this. But for villains that possess people, the paw race have like the best episode ever where they've possessed Keiko O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a paw wraith now, but she's totally like a normal human. I mean, she's eating chocolates and she's like, Miles, you're not going to let me eat all of these, are you?
That was a great
and just super so creepy. If you don't do what I want, I'm going to kill her.
Yeah.
Super creepy. That was an excellent episode. So once again, the producers or writers, anticipating our objections, and so we have discussion of the protocols for detecting shapeshifters that Starfleet has. Standard protocol, just like Stargate Command has, where when people come through the gate, they now have standard protocols for detecting changelings here. And that they discuss it, so that's good. I like that.
And since you go through a bioscanner every time you're transported, the transporter officer could detect that you're a changeling. And that explains the fact from last episode that they pointed out that the changeling they found on the Titan had replaced the transporter officer.
Right.
So, and that would also explain why Ro insists on taking a shuttle if she knows the changelings have been infiltrating transporter officer stations. Oh, sorry, Captain. There was a horrible transporter accident just now. I don't know how it happened.
Right.
Well, I also wonder, because we find out that the changelings have been infiltrating Starfleet from all levels, from ensign all the way up to the top. And I wonder if the transporters are how the changelings, like you said, oops, there's an accident, but actually this changeling just came in as this person instead.
Right.
It could be.
Yeah, could be. So before Ro shows up, we have this scene where Riker hands command back to Shaw. Transfers command back to him, and Shaw, in his wonderful way, doesn't let them off the hook at all. It's like, all right, now that I'm back in control, you're all gonna face the music. And it's like,
it's like actually, I've already called Starfleet, and I'm gonna leave the room now, so you guys can get your BS story together.
Yep. That was so good. That was so good.
And then later, as they're waiting for the Intrepid has arrived, and they're waiting for Ro to come over, although they don't know it's Ro yet. He's just standing between Riker and Picard, humming, and so sorry, just Chipper. And they're talking about good things they've done.
Right. Hopefully they'll remember we've saved the galaxy a few times. Yeah.
And Shaw his perspective on them is they actually have done a bunch of bad things too. And so he's like, he names like 3 incidents that could be regarded as bad. One of which, and they're all famous incidents, but like one of them was the time paradox from from All Good Things, which at the time only Picard was aware of, but apparently he made a report to Starfleet, and so it's commonly known now. But Shaw says, when it comes to rescues from danger, you two have a real chicken and egg thing happening.
Well, they mentioned that. They mentioned the crashing the saucer section, which of course was Generations.
Yeah.
And then there was snogging a villager on Baku.
Oh, throwing the Prime Directive out the window so you could snog a villager on Baku. Yeah.
Yes. I apologize to our British listeners if snog is a bad word. We're Americans. We don't know.
It was on Doctor Who.
They used it on Doctor Who.
Oh, good. Because I know that there's a couple of words and I couldn't remember which one it was. But anyway, that's fine. That was a
British word for making out. That's
okay. Good. Yes. And I do love that. Yes, that aspect of Shaw where he just calls them, like, it's so funny. He just calls them on it, like our heroes are not heroes to everyone, and that would be the reality of it. And yeah, that was great. So we have Ro showing up as the investigating officer. Riker seems delighted Picard less so, for those reasons. And just as a refresher, she left the Enterprise. She was sent undercover by Picard, and they kind of discuss it a little bit, but sent undercover by Picard to infiltrate the Maquis, and ended up becoming a Maquis and betraying Picard. And so obviously we find out that was never resolved in the 30 plus years since that happened.
And that kind of thing can happen in intelligence work and in diplomatic work, where you send someone into a situation and they go native.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And that forms a big part of the resolution of this episode, and a big part of them feeling each other out. Which one is either of us a changeling?
And this is really nice because they have early on, when they're implying that Ro is a changeling, like she does the blood, she cuts her hand in front of Picard to say, let's get this out of the way. And she cuts her hand. And then Beverly sends Picard a text saying they can pass blood tests now. Don't trust anyone. And so having, this is heavily implying she is or maybe a changeling. And then he says she wants to see the changeling, the prisoner. He says it's not a prisoner. He was killed. And then she says, well, then I want to see the body, which is, what a changeling could very well want to do, given their concern for their own people. So he starts taking her down to sickbay, and on the way, she pulls a phaser on him and steers him into the holodeck. Right. Because we built that 10 Forward in Los Angeles set, and we are going to use it.
That's right.
And they've already established we have no good way. I mean, without lots of equipment, we have no good technological way now of detecting a changeling. Yeah. And Picard doesn't have any equipment. And so what they do to prove that to prove that this is really Ro to the viewer is she has a conversation with Picard. And there's actually, you also get things from her perspective. She's not convinced this is Picard. She thinks he may be a changeling. And so the way they prove to each other is by having a very intense conversation about their different points of view and their mutual recriminations and their mutual resentments. At one point, Picard says something to her in Bajoran, which they put a subtitle up on the screen, and she says, your Bajoran is improved. And he says, I've been rehearsing this conversation for 30 years.
Right.
And it's like, that's a nice line.
Yes.
But as a result of this conversation, they push each other, both of them, so much. I mean, he accuses her of being rebellious and a traitor. She accuses him of being a controlling manipulator who only was mentoring her for his own ego. And they push each other so hard that it's clear they both really mean these feelings. And that means they are their real feelings, and that means they are who they say they are. And so they use a non-technological means of showing us that these characters are not changelings, at least unless they're of the Jack Crusher kind.
Right.
And Ro then reveals she's doing this investigation. Starfleet's been penetrated at all levels. And she says to Picard, do you trust me? And Picard thinks about it for a minute and says, yes. But that's a flaw in the writing, because he shouldn't pivot quite that quickly. The correct line would be more than I did a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah. There is another good line she gets off on him when he accuses her of being a traitor and, you betrayed Starfleet. And she tells him, you've confused morality with duty, and that is your dishonor. Like he told her, like, your betrayal is your dishonor. And she says, you've confused morality with duty, and that is your dishonor. And I thought that was an interesting, there is a subtle distinction. Like just, Picard, if he has a flaw, it might be that he too often
follows his duty to the detriment of morality. And that's a nice element to introduce into the story, and perhaps an important element that will bear out through this series, the rest of the season.
Well, and, one thing I like is, Picard goes behind the bar looking like, oh yeah, he's going to pour them drinks, but really he reaches for the holodeck controls, which has to be right next to the phaser, hits the off button for the safety and pulls out the phaser, and so of course this intense conversation is at phaser point. But one thing I kind of got out of it, and kind of my feeling is, they tried to imply that there was more to the relationship of Ro and Picard than just mutual respect, that they're actually kind of sort of budding romantic, although nothing actually came of it. I kind of got that implication where it was, that the betrayal to Picard of her joining the Maquis was more than just, you betrayed your uniform. That conversation between Cisco and what's his name, the Eddington, where it was the betrayal uniform, that there was a little more there. And then part of that does come out. Wasn't there an episode, if I remember right, of TNG where it was a Picard and Ro in the shuttlecraft?
Well, so that happened in Ro's send-off, where like Picard and Ro were in a shuttlecraft together, if I recall correctly. I didn't get a hint of romantic tension. What I got was, there is something more than you're betraying the uniform. It is a personal betrayal as well. He's feeling personally betrayed, but I took it on a father-daughter axis.
Same here.
That he regards Ro as his daughter. Also, I was recently watching I've been recently doing a rewatch of TNG, and I've been seeing some of the Ro episodes, and actually, at least in the source material, the romantic chemistry is between Ro and Riker.
Okay.
And they're hinting, in fact, there's one episode where they all lose their memories, and they assume they're in love with each other, and then they get their memories back.
That's right. I remember that.
I mean, I could have read that differently too, but I mean, it's one of those things that a lot of that is implied anyways. What is, other than the relationship of, a senior captain mentoring a junior ensign.
Right.
And it is interesting that they did kind of bring her back to rehabilitate her character, because, you look at some of the behind the scenes, Ro was being geared up to be the Kira character on DS9.
She was the original Kira.
She was going to go from the Enterprise to DS9 when they did that, and to be I don't know, I would guess leave Starfleet and go with the
Bajoran police,
Bajoran military instead.
Right. Actually, there's a little detail. Some people online were saying that the earring, that Ro's earring, was not Ro's earring from TNG, but was actually Kira's earring from DS9. Which I don't know if that was intentional or just, hey, we need a design, just grab this off the shelf. I don't even know if that's true or not. But
I was glad to see her back. So we had been told by some early reviewers that there was a kind of jaw-dropping moment about someone was coming back who had not been talked about in publicity. So we've now obviously hit that was Ro.
Yep.
I'm glad they rehabilitated the character. I loved her role in this episode. I'm just unhappy they killed her off.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, of course, there's no body, so last minute beam out. But they did such a good job with her character. And I know the send-off is a fitting one. I mean, they have to box her in. We have to have technological blocking and failures in order to set up her death. Oh, we can't beam the bomb out. We can't beam her out, so forth. And not at this distance, so she's got to get closer, and then she turns around and slams into the engine. It's a worthy death, so I appreciate it and I can accept it, but kind of wish they didn't.
Agreed.
Because she's such an interesting character.
Yeah, and then we get another death fake out in the same episode, but we'll get to that in a second. Because before we leave the Titan, there's a couple other things I want to talk about there, which is, there was a moment in Beverly's autopsy of the Changeling of that looked like Sydney, where she turns to Sydney, goes, "Ensign, please indicate this corpse is not you."
And she throws up.
But like, yes, that corpse is not me because I'm here speaking to you, able to indicate.
That's a great sequence, because she says, "Ensign LaForge, please, can you confirm this is not you?" and LaForge throws up. and she says, for the record, she says, "Ensign LaForge indicated it is not her."
that was, I like that moment. We also get so speaking of Raffi and Worf, going back to them, it turns out that their handler is Ro. So she's the one. So Worf was Raffi's handler, and Ro was Worf's handler. So we have several levels of remove here. I have to go back and change something I've been saying all along, which I have assumed all along that the Daystrom break-in was at the Daystrom Institute, which we saw in previous seasons. But it's this space station, the Daystrom facility or something.
Daystrom Station, they call it.
Yeah.
Okay. And hopefully it's not also where they store the homicidal AIs from Lower Decks.
Yeah, that's what maniacal
Yeah.
computer storage.
We will be seeing Moriarty, though, and we'll be seeing him in a context of the Daystrom set. And so it's going to turn out Moriarty is the AI.
I said the same thing. Yeah.
At this Daystrom station, they've been storing forbidden tech and stuff like that. So if you want an AI security system, who better than the arch villain Moriarty to guard your stuff?
Or, hear me out, at the end when Kryn has that little thumb drive with the tool that he used to break through the unbreakable cipher, and that could be Moriarty, which...
Moriarty could be the AI cracker too. That would be interesting. But I'll bet he's the AI.
Yeah, that could be. It could be.
Now, could the AI be Lore?
I think, well, hypothetically, because he is AI.
I mean, because the AI doesn't necessarily have to be a computer program.
Right. No. Hypothetically, it could be Lore. My guess, though, is that Lore is what was stolen by the Changelings as the even bigger weapon than the portal gun.
Or is it the Jeffrey Wayoon AI from Lower Decks? Just kidding. Yeah. That would be awesome. Agabus. I couldn't remember his name. Yeah, that would be awesome.
I think that's stretching it as much as I did write down. Well, you see the self-aware megalomaniacal computer storage. No, we won't.
No, we won't. We won't. Oh, you know, one thing I didn't mention, I wanted to, when we're talking about Ro, is Riker notices that Ro isn't wearing her earring and asks her if she's lost her Bajoran faith. And so I think it was interesting that we bring in that faith. And it turns out, well, apparently it's because she was using the earring as a device to pass information to Picard, not necessarily because she lost her faith. But it's interesting they brought it up.
RFID flash drive is what it really is.
Really, yeah. So back to the Worf and Raffi show. They come up with this idea to find Sneed's partner in crime, to lure him out. They go back down into the Metalis 7 or whatever the number is, underworld. They are now the alphas, as they say, you know, and
as Worf says.
Yeah, but then Worf says what we'll wait for is for the ecology to reassert itself. In other words, you know, Kryn's going to show up is what he's anticipating. And Kryn turns out to be a Vulcan crime lord, which is an interesting idea.
And he's got a logical reason for it, too. He justifies his criminality in terms of logic. Right.
And it's interesting considering what we saw in Strange New Worlds with the whole pursuing Vulcan criminals in that one, and that's what
T'Pring.
T'Pring, yes, it was a T'Peth something. That's her job, was rehabilitating Vulcan criminals. So he's a Vulcan crime lord.
Well, and he grew up on this world, so he didn't grow up on Vulcan, and that's how he was friends with the Ferengi and many others. Right, they kind of washed out for each other in this rough, basically slum.
Street urchin, sort of thing. Yeah, they consider him a brother, he said.
He's got these green facial tattoos under one eye, which are pretty interesting.
Yeah. I thought he was Romulan at first. That was that was my first hint, but
he did have the Vulcan circle.
IDIC.
Yeah. But as like a bling. He's wearing it like it's
like Flava Flav. Yeah. So and
by the way, one thing about this, we are the alphas now.
Yeah.
Okay, this whole alpha thing is scientifically really problematic because if you actually study wolf packs in the wild where they live, they ain't got alphas. They're much more cooperative. Alphas are an emergent phenomenon that happens if you cram too many wolves into a cage. And so alphas don't really exist that way in the wild.
Yep.
I was understanding the wolf packs in the wild are like, it's the father, the male patriarch of the pack, basically, right?
It was more of a development as part of a study that you don't, like Jimmy said, you don't see in the wild. I actually just recently saw that as well as with dogs. This idea of you need to be the alpha male for your dog. No, you need to be part of the pack, but help the dog learn his or her place in the pack.
Gotcha. So, Worf and Rafi are, well, first, they set up this situation where they're going to try to get the drop on Sneed. They're like where they think that they've got, not Sneed, Kryn, where they think they've got Rafi and Worf at gunpoint, phaser point. And it turns out they've got a mobile emitter on a hologram of Rafi. So it looks like that the Doctor's mobile emitter from Voyager is now in wider use anyway, not common, but wider use certainly. And Kryn says, oh, well, you think I wouldn't recognize a mobile emitter when I see one? So common enough that people can recognize it. And so she gets caught in her sniper position. Then and he's going to make them fight. And Rafi apparently kills Worf. And like I was saying before, we've already had the death of a major character. I didn't feel like we're not going to kill off Worf after we've killed off Ro. So it kind of sucked a little bit of the drama out. Especially
not in this way. Worf is not going to be dead.
Right. Yeah, he's not going to be killed by an ally.
And this is the he can, through mental concentration can control his pulse rate to almost nothing.
The meditation of Kahless. Yeah.
The Kahless technique of heartbeat regulation. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
The way this happens, Kryn forces them. He says, okay, you two are going to fight to the death now. And if you don't, in 60 seconds, I'll kill you both. And so this is a genuine force. Exactly why he's doing this, he just seems to be being cruel. He says his gang has bets on who's going to win. Most are favoring the Klingon because of course you do.
Yeah. As you would.
Yeah, but and she does stab Worf, and it looks like he's dead, but then he's learned this meditation technique to lower his heartbeat. So if they did a scan of him, it would show he's still alive.
Right.
But I can accept it. It's fun enough. I tend to not be a fan of fights to the death. But whatever.
He's only mostly dead.
Yeah.
What have you got to live for?
It was so great though that he comes back out of this and kills all the henchmen.
Yes.
And then he's standing there with the knife at the leader's throat, Kryn's throat. And it's like, can we hurry up? I really am bleeding to death here.
Yeah. I am in urgent need of medical attention. And I love it when that dawns on him. It's like it's like
the blood.
Yeah. And Kryn is like, you guys aren't going to hurt me. You're Starfleet. And she's like, my friend is in urgent need of medical attention. How much patience do you think we have?
Yeah.
I need to correct myself because you know what? Ro's death occurs after this. So in fact,
yes.
Right. So in fact, it didn't. We had a major character death, and this was the fake out as opposed to the the real one, which was Ro. So I would see them doing that as a way of, in case it leaked that a major character dies in this episode, that we would think it was the Worf death, quote unquote. So I could see them doing that. That's when they get the thumb drive from Kryn with whatever the cracking mechanism, the Moriarty program, maybe.
I like the way they do that. They're like, you will give us this thing now. And he's like, that would be logical.
Yes. He, after all, is a Vulcan. And so this is when we switch back to the Titan in jeopardy. Ro dies. Ro has removed almost all of the Titan's crew, except for a skeleton crew that she left behind on purpose, because she wants the Titan to run. And by removing most of the Titan's crew, she's lowered the odds that any of the remaining ones are changelings.
Right.
So she's also reduced casualties too, maybe.
Right. That too. And although they're all on not the Odyssey, the Intrepid.
Intrepid.
Which, yeah. So dangerous. The Intrepid is actually the same class as the new Enterprise F, apparently. So it's like, that's what, if we ever see the new Enterprise F, that's what it will look like.
I wasn't a fan of the Intrepid's design, and I'm not a big ship design guy.
Yeah. It's interesting. And then, they convince Shaw to run. He's dithering. He takes some convincing, but until they finally go, they're getting ready to frame you for this, for what Ro did. So you should probably run. And so he's got no choice. He's in a corner.
Well, not just frame you, but start firing on you. Because photon torpedoes are powered up and coming our way.
Which is what they do. Yeah.
Because they need to kill you in order to successfully frame you so you can't tell your side of the story.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Jack is confronted by these 4 changelings who look like security officers and does the switch over thing, like you mentioned, Jimmy. The red branches take over. He goes through the red door, however you want to put it. There's, in fact, he sees a physical red wooden door in the corridor of the ship there, which is interesting. And wonder if it's a representation of the actual red door that he's going to eventually go through, or it's purely symbolic. I'm kind of curious, but he pretty handily kills them. Go ahead.
Well, he put the red door, and on either side of it are windows with the Starfleet logo on it.
Okay.
Like the whole back wall changes.
Yeah. Because it was a turbolift before. Right.
Yeah.
So, and then we have the reveal that Ro handed off all of her investigation files to Picard and Riker, and they see Worf on the screen. I love that surprise, like on both of the parts. Like, Worf's expecting Ro, they're not expecting Worf, and it's like, oh, it's you. No, it's you, and it's kind of a funny little moment there.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you, but where's Commander Ro? Bad news, dude.
Right. So, and then that's where we end the episode. So, anything I missed or any final thoughts, Father Cory?
Nothing here.
Jimmy?
So what they reveal about the new physicality of changelings in this episode could help explain why Vadic cut off her hand in the last episode a little bit anyway, because they're somehow less malleable than they used to be. It makes them better at passing tests, but they're actually, this is conceptually, I mean, if they have to revert to a bucket of goo for 8 hours a day, why do they stay solid on death? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Also, this is not how evolution works. Evolution takes place much more slowly than in the last 15 years, because you're adapting to changed circumstance. And so organisms have to repeatedly interact with the new circumstance, and those who show greater survival and reproduction potential under the new circumstances end up acquiring new characteristics or adapted characteristics. And we haven't seen enough changelings interacting with enough humans in a way that they need to be able to pass better. If anything, this would be genetic engineering rather than evolution.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking more figurative than literal. Yeah.
And see, this is where I was talking about that idea that Jack might actually be a hybrid changeling human, but he might be the most successful of them, where he doesn't have to revert.
And also shades of Discovery and what's his face, the Klingon human changeling there, so to speak. It's not the same thing, but that's actually just reminded me of that. What's his name? The one, the Klingon who looked like the love interest of Burnham.
The one.
You mean Vok?
Vok,
Tyler
yes.
Vok, yeah.
Tyler Vok, yeah. That kind of reminds me of that whole idea of the hybrid and the switch over. All right. Anything else, Jimmy? Was that
No, I would suspect that Jack he is really the son of Picard and Beverly through natural means. He may have had genetic engineering later, though.
Ooh, good point. Maybe he's a human who's had changeling DNA inserted. That would be an interesting thing. That would be good. Or interesting anyway. All right. So that's it for our discussion of the Imposters. Let's get to our listener feedback on our last episode, No Win Scenario, where the first feedback comes from Rob Cox on Facebook, who writes, "This episode was truly amazing. The stakes were small, just the ship and the crew. Maybe not small to them, but not the Doctor Who, the whole universe will be destroyed stakes.
Yeah.
Captain Shaw has become one of the best Star Trek characters I've watched in a long time. So far, this show has repaired what happened the last 2 seasons."
What last 2 seasons? Well, there was a show previously that had Jean-Luc Picard, had Patrick Stewart, but now we get real Star Trek Picard.
I think Shaw is definitely the breakout character this season. He's people just seem to a large number of people just seem to love him because of how great he is. He doesn't take Picard and Riker seriously.
Yep.
He needles them, and he has this really compelling tragic backstory that justifies his approach to them.
Yeah.
In some ways, I felt like Rios was the breakout character last season and before in the first 2 seasons, and then we lost him, and so now we have Shaw. But yeah, those 2 characters are probably my favorites from Picard. That's for sure.
Yeah, and he doesn't take their crap. He just kind of like, no, we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna do that. And we all 3 of us have said it. He's a jerk. But he's right.
We might make a shirt that says that he's a jerk, but he may be a jerk, but he's right.
I also, though, I really like, in terms of characters who are new to Picard from previous seasons. I really like Rafi, and I liked Agnes.
Yeah, me too. I'm kind of sad that we didn't follow up on the Borg storyline, but who knows? A future series or something may pick that back up again. So our next feedback comes from NTNG13 on YouTube, who writes, "Just because it's the first time we see Sydney call her Seven on screen doesn't mean it's the first time it happens. If Seven tells Captain Shaw that Sydney does it out of respect and even uses it as a clue to find the changeling, then it implies that it's something she does habitually."
Well, that's a generous reading. It's not impossible, but my reaction is based on what they've shown to us as viewers. And showing it once is a slender read before you Commander Hansen right there in front of the captain who insists on her being called that. Blam, you're dead.
Yeah.
That I would want more justification than that before I shoot someone.
Right.
And that scene where she calls her Commander 7 at her quarters, that seemed more like of a tip off that I'm on your side than it did
a regular habit.
Right. So we'd have to have seen it more often.
This was a tell not show thing. They told us they didn't show it to us. So
Yep.
I mean, it's still plausible, still highly plausible and very likely, but
yeah. Eric writes via email, "I noticed that the knife Vadik uses to cut off her hand is the same knife that Shinzon in Star Trek Nemesis had. Could this be a tie-in to the Romulans? There's been speculation of a return of Denise Crosby, so could this be a little foreshadow of that? The Star Trek Nemesis plot involved a clone of Picard. Jack is having these hallucinations. What if he's somehow a sleeper Romulan agent? What if this could portend the return of Selah or somehow even Tasha Yar herself? It's getting interesting for sure."
I never liked the character Selah, so I would be happy for Selah not to return. I would love for Denise Crosby to return, but I don't think it's going to happen. This was fan speculation very early on because there was apparently word that there were going to be additional people who hadn't been announced, and fans immediately leapt to Denise Crosby, and the showrunners really tried to cool that down and say it's not her. They could be lying, but unless they're lying, I don't think it's going to be Denise Crosby.
I don't see the Romulans coming into this. We're halfway through the season now, and other than this knife, which could have been literally they just used the same prop. I mean, it could be just that simple or a similar looking prop. And also, the fact of a person returning, well, obviously we just had that. We've got with Ro coming back, that could be the person was rumored, but people thought it might have been Denise Crosby instead.
Yeah. Also, if I recall correctly, there may have even been word that it was a female who was returning, and people immediately thought Denise Crosby instead of Ro Laren. also, in terms of Romulans, they were the big bads in season 1.
Right.
And so I would suspect, and it really looks like it's the Changelings this time rather than the Romulans.
Yeah. I wouldn't rule out other people coming back from TNG since this is the last season of Picard, right? And they want to kind of, pull in all the loose threads. I wouldn't rule out seeing anyone. I think more like the most likely one we're going to see is Wesley again. He was in season 2. He is Jack's brother and Beverly's son. I mean, and he was a regular. I mean, if anyone's going to come back, it'll be Wesley.
And isn't LeVar Burton confirmed to be in this?
Oh, yeah. He and
everybody is
Spiner.
Yet.
Yeah. It's beyond the bridge crew is what Dom means.
Yeah.
And Wesley could be logical, but I suspect we won't see him. If we do, it'll probably be right at the very end.
That's possible. Yeah. And then Chris S. writes via email, I find it fascinating that Riker's crisis is his belief that there is nothing after death, something that was brought home to him after the tragic death of his son. It's fascinating because Riker lives in Gene Roddenberry's atheist future, a place where Jameson whiskey has survived the centuries, but organized religion has not. Plus, left-hand milk stout. We'll get to that in a minute. The implication is that Riker hoped to find something more, that he searched for and was open to it as an explorer in space for all those years leading up to his son's death. And that death closed the door on his hope. All of this at odds with how Roddenberry created the TNG characters and universe. A Roddenberry character never would have hoped for or searched for any kind of deeper meaning in the first place, Star Trek V notwithstanding. And so the death of his son, while tragic, should not have had that deeper effect on Riker unless he didn't completely buy into the atheism of his times to begin with. Don't get me wrong, I love that the writers of this season of Picard chose to make Riker's existential spiritual crisis a focus rather than the ineffectual left-wing heavy-handed preaching of season 2. Of course, the resolution to the crisis should be Picard channeling Jimmy Akin and rationally outlining the proofs for the existence of a god and an afterlife using reason. Instead, we get, let's face the end together, which is as close as secular Hollywood can come. But I'll take it. I enjoyed it. On a personal note, even as a cradle Catholic, I can relate to some similar feelings after the deaths of my parents. It's normal, and it's part of the human condition. I also love the inadvertent pro-life themes running through the show this season, from Riker's comment in episode 3 that you picked up on, Dom, to the whole notion of the nebula giving birth and the beauty of that new life. I'm sure the cast would never acknowledge or agree with it being pro-life in any sense, but those themes are there, whether they want to admit it or not.
So your comment, Dom, had been about Riker's referring to his unborn child.
Yes, he mentioned it as unborn. Yeah.
Yeah. So certainly Gene Roddenberry, probably wouldn't be on board with this. He probably, with Riker's journey in this way, he probably wouldn't be on board with a lot of things, although he might be. But he really had this idea that even though, grief and loss and so forth are part of our human experience today, that by the 24th century, people would have overcome their fear of death. And so, they'd still be a little sad when someone dies, but they wouldn't have the kind of existential crisis that Riker does. And so that is inconsistent with Roddenberry's vision, although Roddenberry could be very inconsistent himself. There was actually an episode of The Next Gen where I think Roddenberry was dead at this point, but there were still debates about how much of his vision of perfected humanity in the future should still be honored. And they had this episode, I forget the title of it, but it's the one where it focuses on a little boy whose parents have died on an away mission.
Oh, right.
Yep.
And originally it was going to be about the human drama of this little boy having lost his parents and what that would be like. And there was a huge fight on the writing staff about the direction of the episode because the producers were like, this is not Gene Roddenberry's vision of how we handle death. And the writers were like, we can't be completely unrealistic. This is a little boy. And they eventually said, okay, maybe we can take Roddenberry's dictum that this kid is not reacting the way his culture expects him to and make that the drama. And so they were able to figure out a way to sort of use Roddenberry's dictum against itself. But Riker's existential journey in this regarding the death of his son is contrary to Roddenberry's perfected vision of humanity. And perfected in quotes, because it's not perfect if you don't grieve the death of a loved one. But on the other hand, Roddenberry might have been okay with the ending because it's ultimately Riker goes to a delivery room and his existential crisis is solved.
Yeah. All right, and then the last comment comes from Jeff Hecker of the Secrets of Middle-earth panel, who wrote in on our Discord, said, I finally listened to your latest podcast. My craft beer geekiness compels me to mention that milk stouts or other beers with lactose actually are made with lactose milk sugar, not lactic acid. A local brewer makes amazing sours with lactose, and I really enjoy milk stouts as well. Milkshake IPA is also a style with lactose.
Yes, I misspoke last time where I said lactic acid. As he comments, lactic acid, lactobacillus bacteria is used to create sours. So if you ever get like a fruit sour or something like that, that's what they use. If you get a ghost type beer, which is kind of a salted sour, that they use that lactobacillus. For the sweeter beers like the milkshake IPAs, which I'm actually not the biggest fan of, surprisingly. I haven't had a good one. And of course the milk stouts, and you mentioned the left-hand milk stout. That is the lactose sugar that you find in milk, or milk sugar they call it. Mm-hmm. So it gives it a creamy taste and texture. So he called me out of my beer geekiness. I misspoke. So
hey, you caught it from the milk stout. So yeah.
I concede his and your superior knowledge of beer. I didn't know milk beer and fruit beer were things.
Oh yes, and some of them are quite good.
Yeah, some of them are. You can have the IPAs. So that does it for all the feedback. I'm just going to lay that right out there. That's our feedback. We love to get your feedback. Before we go, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including James I, Adam S, Mike M, Kelly P, and Eliza Jane F. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you thought of Imposter, this Star Trek Picard episode. You can let us know by commenting on our show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch The Secrets of Star Trek in video on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia and leave a comment there. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notifications of new videos. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Picard called The Bounty. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest, and remember, blind faith in any institution does not make one honorable.